Thursday. This is Talking Sports with Evan, and thank you so much for tuning in here on X, on Facebook, and YouTube. You can view on Facebook and YouTube at Talking Sports with Evan, and here on X at Evan with Sports. Want to thank you all for listening and tuning in. As I mentioned, a Thursday edition of the show, and I'm so glad that you're going to spend some time here with me watching Talking Sports with Evan. Lots to talk about tonight, lots to go over. It's been a crazy week in the NFL with all of these free agency moves. There's been a lot starting a week ago tonight, a lot of things, domino effect happening very quickly. And Monday, the first day of the legal tampering period, was absolutely crazy. And it just kind of went from there. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the Packers signings and go over what I think of what they've done so far and what I would still like to see them do, what I would still like to see them address is the other thing I will discuss as well. But before we do any of that, I have to tip my hat to the Wisconsin women's Badger hockey team. Another incredible season for the Wisconsin Women Badgers hockey team. They are the number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament after going 35-1-2. They won the WCHA regular season conference. They won the WCHA regular season tournament title, and they've been the number one ranked team in the country since September. The Badgers have had an outstanding year once again, and that's pretty much been the MO since the 2002 season when Coach Mark Johnson got snubbed for the men's hockey position and ended up becoming the head coach for the women's team. And as they say, it's been great from there. And I think Mark Johnson probably has one of the best resumes I've ever seen. He's an Olympic gold medalist. He's a national champion. He's a national champion coach. He's played in the NHL. And since he's been the Badger women's coach, he has 7 national championships, 10 WCHA regular season championships, 10 WCHA tournament championships. He is a 4-time AHCA Coach of the Year and a 10-time WCHA Coach of the Year. He has a record as a head coach for the women's hockey team of 629, 119, and 53, an 818 winning percentage during his time with the Badger women's hockey team. And he's never had a losing record during his time there. His first year there, he finished 3rd in the conference, going 25-8. And second year, finished 2nd in the conference, 25-6. Made the NCAA quarterfinals his 3rd year, going 28-9. And then he went to the national championship 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years in a row, winning 4 times, losing 2. He won his first national title in 2005, then again in 06, lost in 07, 08, won in 08, 09, won in 10, 11, and lost in 11, 12. He made the Final Four after a 23-10 season in 2012, finishing 3rd, made the Frozen Four 3 years in a row, runner-up, Frozen Four, NCAA champion. They were on their way to another NCAA championship before the season was canceled due to the pandemic. Then in 2020, 2021, NCAA champion, NCAA quarterfinals, NCAA champion, and 23-24, NCAA runner-up. And they, as I said, the number one overall seed going into the NCAA tournament. The Badger hockey team, just incredible. Mark Johnson, just incredible. And it makes me really wonder. So Mark Johnson was an assistant coach for the Badger men's hockey team from 1996 to 2002. The Badgers had their choice. Jeff Sauer retired, and they could have hired assistant coach Mark Johnson, or they ended up hiring Mike Eves, who is a former player and captain on the 1977 NCAA championship. And yes, the Badgers won a national championship under Mike Evers. They won a national championship under him, but they underachieved a lot. They struggled. They finished the 2014-15 season with a 4-26-5 record, 15-16 with an 8-19-8 record. They didn't have a lot of success after winning the NCAA championship. They made it again in 2010. They won it in 2006 in Milwaukee with a 2-1 win over Boston College. They got back to the championship in 2010, losing to Boston College 5-0. And they haven't really done a whole lot of success under Eves. Tony Granato was hired. That was a disaster. And now with Mike Hastings, they had a rough season this most recent year, but things are looking more positive for the men's hockey team. But it really makes me wonder, where would the men's hockey program be if Mark Johnson got the job? Would he have the same success as the women's hockey program has had since he's been there? I was not happy when he didn't get the job. I wanted him. I'm a big Wisconsin sports fan. I wanted Mark Johnson to get the job. His dad coached at Wisconsin, and he was an assistant for a while. It seemed like he was going to be the heir apparent, and then the Badgers went in a different direction. And it ended up working out well for Mark Johnson, as I just gave his resume as the head coach of the Badger women's program. He's had just, like I said, an outstanding career as the Badger women's coach. And his players are just incredible, too. They have 3 players. The top 3 finalists for one of the players of the year is all from the Wisconsin women's hockey team. And their goalie's outstanding. They have outstanding talent just completely throughout the roster. They're just a fun team to watch, a fun team to observe, a fun team to, as you know, just cheer on, because the way they play. And Mark Johnson is a big reason of that. He's built a great program, and the women that he has recruited to play for this program has just been incredible too. O'Brien, Sims, Harvey, Edwards, just been outstanding teams. And if the Badgers win the national championship, it will be one of the best seasons ever if they cap it off. So they don't know who they're playing yet. They got a bye. They play Saturday at 2:00, and we will find out Saturday at 2:00 who the Badgers are going to play. Is it going to be Boston College or I think it's Boston University, I think, actually. But either way, we find out who the Badger women's hockey team is going to play. And I encourage you all, if you can find it somewhere on ESPN Plus or wherever is airing it, give it a check. Watch a great hockey team play hockey in the NCAA tournament, and a team that has a great opportunity to win it all once again. So moving on, this is Talking Sports with Evan. I'm Evan Wood-Tallison, the host of the show. And moving on to the free agency, NFL free agency. And it has been crazy. It has been a crazy past week. That is just, so you had Devontae Adams signed with the Rams. You had DK Metcalf traded to Seattle. Those are just 2 of the examples of what happened. You had lots of movement everywhere. I'm going to break it down position by position. So Sam Darnold signs a 3-year, $100.5 million deal with the Seattle Seahawks. Sam Darnold looked like a complete bust in New York. He looked like a complete bust in Carolina. Couldn't get on the field in San Francisco, and has an incredible year in Minnesota, giving him this payday. Sam Darnold is a winner in free agency, as he got a 3-year, $100.5 million contract. Now, what Seattle needs to do is their offensive line, especially the guard position, is not very good. And you traded away one of his wide receivers in DK Metcalf. You released his other receiver in Tyler Lockett. So now you really just have one receiver on the team that's any good, JSN. And now you're spending that money on Darnold. Now you got to build around him. You traded away another former Jet to the Raiders, and another guy who was seen as a bust. And now you have the opportunity to build around a young quarterback who could be there for a while. And if I'm the Seahawks, that's what I am looking to do moving forward. Justin Fields signs a 2-year, $40 million with the New York Jets. I don't blame Justin Fields for not going back to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh wants Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is playing a little bit of hard to get with Pittsburgh, and Justin Fields doesn't want the same situation that happened in Pittsburgh last year to happen to him again, and he wants to be a starter. And New York gives him a great chance to be a starter. Very good athlete, just very raw as a quarterback, and we'll see what the offensive coordinator or the Jets can do to try to build an offense around him to play to his strengths. And there's definitely some arm talent there. We just haven't seen it yet because he was in a bad organization in Chicago, and then he got a handful of games in Pittsburgh, and then Russell Wilson got the job, and he never started again. I don't know what if Justin Fields would have continued to play decent to good if he would have started all 17 games, but they gave the job to Russell Wilson. Daniel Jones signed a 1-year, $14 million deal with the Indianapolis Colts, sounding like he might have a good chance to start depending on Anthony Richardson and how he plays and if he can win that job or not. Good move for Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones. You likely not going to compete for the starting job in Minnesota. They have J.J. McCarthy, who they are looking like they're going to do everything possible to make sure he's the starting quarterback, unless they sign Aaron Rodgers. But Daniel Jones finds a home. He has a chance to compete to be a starter and a pretty good one to win the starting job. Not really lived up to his hype, got a bad contract that he didn't earn, and the Giants just let him go after giving him that ridiculous second contract. Jacoby Brissett, the veteran, signed a 2-year, $12 million deal with Arizona. Marcus Mariota re-signed with Washington. Mason Rudolph's back in Pittsburgh. So I guess the Steelers have their Aaron Rodgers insurance policy. The Steelers want Aaron Rodgers to be their quarterback. They're trying to get him. They're trying to convince him, and they don't have an answer yet. And I guess they're going to give Aaron Rodgers as much time as he wants before they decide if they're going to move on with him or not. The Giants have moved on already. I think the Vikings have pretty much moved on already. And now the Steelers are just waiting. And I guess they signed Mason Rudolph, who used to play for Pittsburgh, somebody who knows the Steelers, knows Mike Tomlin, as kind of, I guess, an insurance policy in case Aaron Rodgers says, deuces, I ain't coming. And then Mac Jones signed with the 49ers, 2-year, $7 million. I guess this gives Mac Jones a chance to see if he can reinvent himself kind of the same way you saw Sam Darnold do in San Francisco. He gets a chance to kind of reinvent himself a little bit, and maybe he's a starting quarterback down the road in another organization. Quarterback still available. Russell Wilson, who's visited with Cleveland, has flirted with Pittsburgh a little bit, but Pittsburgh wants Aaron Rodgers. So they're like, hey, Russell, we want you here if we can't get Aaron Rodgers. Jameis Winston still looking for a job. Joe Flacco, and, of course, Aaron Rodgers. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to Minnesota. It'll make a lot of sense because they have a all-pro wide receiver, an up-and-coming wide receiver, a good tight end. You just invested heavily into the offensive line, and you have Aaron Jones in the backfield to take some pressure off of you, and you invested heavily in the defensive line. So Minnesota would make a lot of sense if Aaron Rodgers wants to try to win a Super Bowl, but I don't even know what his motivation is at this point anymore. At the running back position, Aaron Jones re-signed with the Vikings, 2-year, $20 million deal. Not surprised. Not surprised he re-signed with the Vikings, but I'm surprised with what the Vikings gave him for a contract. Aaron Jones is in his 30s. He's 31, I want to say. That typically is when running backs hit a brick wall. And this is a very good draft class for running backs, and they could have signed him to a cheaper deal if Jones wanted to stay so bad, or let him go, and then you can draft a running back in the draft and go from there. But they signed him to a 2-year, $20 million deal. My guess is they still draft somebody. Najee Harris signed with the Chargers on a 1-year deal up to 9.25. Javonte Williams signed with the Cowboys on a 1-year, $3 million deal. And the guy that Javonte Williams is replacing in Dallas, Rico Dowdle, signed a 1-year deal with the Carolina Panthers. J.K. Dobbins is still available. Nick Chubb's still available. Kareem Hunt, Gus Edwards, Mike Sanders. Wide receiver, position that I wanted the Packers to potentially take a long, hard look at and sign somebody, but unfortunately the pickings are very, very slim. Chris Godwin returned to Tampa Bay on a 3-year deal. He technically never became a free agent. Devontae Adams, as I mentioned, signed with the Rams. DeAndre Hopkins signed with the Ravens on a 1-year deal. Marquez Hollywood Brown re-signed with Kansas City on a 1-year deal. Darius Slayton re-signed with the Giants on a 1-year deal. So you kind of get in the theme here a little bit. Noah Brown re-signed with the Commanders on a 1-year deal. So there's a lot of guys re-signing. Zay Jones re-signed with Arizona. So a lot of guys re-signing. And then you had, I mentioned Devontae already. You had Mike Williams signed with the Chargers. So he went back to Los Angeles. He left Los Angeles, went to, assuming it's the same Mike Williams, because it seems to be 8 million Mike Williams in the NFL. But Mike Williams goes to the Jets. Now he's going back to the Chargers. Joshua Palmer left the Chargers to go to the Bills. Demarcus Robinson signed a 2-year deal with San Francisco. Marquez Valdes-Scantling signed a 1-year deal with Seattle. Nick Westbrook signed with the Dolphins. I mentioned Noah Brown. Dimey Brown signed with Jacksonville. Tutu Atwell signed with the Rams, or re-signed with the Rams. Mac Hollins signed with the Patriots. Van Jefferson signed with the Titans. Zay Jones, I mentioned, with Arizona. Justin Watson with Houston. Now, unfortunately, the available wide receivers are very slim pickings, and unfortunately, I don't think the Packers are going to get a wide receiver. Cooper Kupp's been linked to the Packers, but it doesn't typically fit what the Packers traditionally like to do at the wide receiver position. They don't usually want to sign veterans. Amari Cooper and Stephon Diggs are two other examples that are available right now. Tight ends, Evan Ingram, who was released by Jacksonville, went to Denver. Bates re-signed with the Commanders. Austin Hooper re-signed with the Patriots. Zach Ertz re-signed with the Commanders. Gesicki re-signed with the Bengals. And Juwan Johnson re-signed with the Saints. Ronnie Staley re-signed with the Ravens, and so forth. The Packers signed an interior offensive lineman in Aaron Brooks. He signed a 4-year deal with Green Bay. But you look at what the Bears did. Drew Dahlman, center, signed a 3-year deal with the Bears. Minnesota got Ryan Kelly, a 2-year deal to play center. You got Will Fry signed with the Vikings, 5-year, $88 million. He's a guard. So you see a lot of teams spending a lot of money, including the Packers, to stock up on interior offensive linemen. So obviously, these teams have watched the Super Bowl. These teams definitely watched the Super Bowl. And they know that the reason why the Eagles dominated the Chiefs was because of their play up front on the offensive line. I'll get into my specific thought on the bank signing in a minute. Going to finish kind of going through Khalil Mack stayed with the Chargers. Josh Sweat went to the Cardinals, and so forth. Packers didn't sign any or hasn't signed any edge guys yet. Interior defensive linemen, they lost Slayton at linebackers. Not really a lot of movement, a lot of bodies there per se in regards to who would fit the Packers. And corner, they signed Nate Hobbs, a 4-year, $48 million deal, and Eric Stokes signed with the Raiders. Now, winners and losers in free agency. Milton Williams went to the Patriots on a 4-year, $100 million deal. He was a 2021 third-round pick. played great in the Super Bowl, and he used his Super Bowl to give him a nice payday. And the Patriots get a nice big body to their defensive line. I like this signing. I think it gets the Patriots more physical up front. Chris Godwin returned to Tampa Bay on a 3-year deal, $66 million. A great move by Tampa Bay. You have him and Mike Evans still playing together. He's comfortable there. He's played his entire career in Tampa Bay. Clearly finishing in Tampa Bay is important to him. Josh Sweat left the Eagles, just like Milton Williams left the Eagles. Josh Sweat left the Eagles and went to the Cardinals, signing a 4-year, $76.4 million contract. He went back to playing for Jonathan Gannon, who was the defensive coordinator the last time the Eagles won the Super Bowl. He's the head coach in Arizona, and he capitalized on his Super Bowl performance for a really nice payday. The Cardinals need pass rushers. Like I said, good for them. I talked Sam Darnold already. It's a good move for Seattle overall, but now it's a matter of putting pieces around him. Justin Reed left the Chiefs to go to the Saints on a 3-year, $31.5 million deal. I don't know how the Saints are finding this money. They were just significantly over the salary cap, and they were able to get under the salary cap, and now they're spending all this money. But he is definitely a good, steady veteran for the Saints secondary, and he definitely is a benefit to have with the Saints. Charvarius Ward goes from San Francisco to the Colts on a 3-year, $60 million contract, a big high-end corner who did pretty well this past season, and now he's going to Indianapolis to continue his career. Wish him well, because he lost his 1-year-old daughter due to heart complications during the season, and he basically wanted to get a fresh start, change the scenery, and we'll see if he bounces back to an even better 2025. Dre Greenlaw left San Francisco to go to the Broncos, and that's kind of been a theme of free agency. The 49ers have gotten rid of a lot of players. They got rid of Bosa. They got rid of Greenlaw. They lost Ward. They got rid of their all-everything tight end, or not tight end, fullback. They lost a lot, and a part of that is that now they have to pay a quarterback because Brock Purdy is going into the last year of his deal. Well, the Broncos paid probably more than he needed to for Greenlaw, but another solid defender there. DJ Reed heads to the Lions on a 3-year, $48 million deal. The Lions lose one corner, and they bring in another corner. Carlton Davis went to the Patriots, and they bring in DJ Reed. The Vikings, another division team, they beefed up their defensive line. Jonathan Allen signed a 3-year, $60 million deal. As a Packer fan, I hate the signing because I've always been a Jonathan Allen fan. I always wanted him in Green Bay during the draft process. I thought he was great in Washington, and now we get to play him twice a year. But Jonathan Allen is a very solid, very steady football player, and he's going to make a Viking defense better. Javon Hargrove is going to the Vikings from the 49ers, 2-year, $30 million deal. Good for him. Had a torn triceps that limited to just 3 games last season. Another older guy at 32. Allen's about 30, 31. But the Vikings trying to beef up that front. They did on the offensive line, which I talked about already, and now on the defensive line. Wolf Fries, who I mentioned, 5-year, $88 million deal, and he's going to add some stability to that front. Drew Dahlman was probably the best. Sorry about that. Probably the best center on the market. He goes to Chicago to better that front. I mentioned Carlton Davis. So those are some of the big moves in free agency. Chase Young stayed with the Saints. He's somebody who I wanted the Packers to consider signing as a free agent, but he ended up staying in New Orleans. I guess he kind of feels comfortable, found a home there. But now let's look at, in particular, the Packers signings. Aaron Banks The big offensive lineman from San Francisco, played left guard for them, has had some injury concerns here and there. And he's a young player who the Packers are hoping takes that next step to being an elite player. And he's likely going to slot into left guard, where Elgton Jenkins is going to move to center. And now you're going to have Jenkins at center and Banks at left guard. 4 years, $77 million contract. Consistency has been a problem for him. So I guess he's going to fit right into Green Bay with some of the young players. But we saw in the NFC wild card game, super wild card weekend game against the Eagles, when Elgton Jenkins went down, the Packers were down 6 after 3 quarters. It was 16-10. But the lack of ability to protect protect Jordan Love, to give Jordan Love time to throw the football, to give Jordan Love time to find guys down the field, to give Jacobs room to run, that hindered what the Packers wanted to do offensively. They seemed to be in handcuffs. Up front, and part of that was Elgton Jenkins' injury. Part of that was Josh Myers, who signed a 1 year, $3.5 million deal with the Jets. Inconsistent play. So the Packers need to improve up front, and they think they're doing that with Banks, and we'll see if it ends up panning out. But I've seen some people saying that, well, if that's all Josh Myers got in free agency, a 1 year, $3.5 million deal, maybe the Packers should have just brought him back instead of signing Banks. Well, the thing is, we've seen Josh Myers for 4 years in Green Bay, and we've seen a lot of inconsistent, up and down football, more bad than good. And it was time to move on and try to something else. And now it's going to be Elgton Jenkins likely at center. And then the other signing for the Packers, who I mentioned, cornerback, is an interesting one. Nate Hobbs is a very interesting pickup for the Packers. He's played a bunch of slot. He's played a bunch on the boundary. He is Pro Football Focus rated him as a 61.4, so right around average. Had 1 interception in 2024. Gets a lot of tackles, 39 solo tackles, ranked him 73rd. He had a lot of plays around the line of scrimmage where he was playing out of the slot in the run game, which is good to have. He's been another one that's been injuries. Injuries have been a concern. He's had a hard time staying healthy, and I think it's going to be a good signing for Green Bay. Fits Goody's style, just like Banks did. Guy coming off his rookie contract, and hopefully you get a young guy who has his best football ahead of them. That's been Goody's MO as a general manager. I'm going to segue into my next topic. Goody's MO as the Packers general manager, since he's been there, aside from Jimmy Graham and some other guys here and there, it's always been your Zadarius Smith, your Preston Smith, your Adrian Amos, your Billy Turner, all coming off rookie contracts, all in their middle 20s, all really good athletes, signs them the big contracts. Last year, Xavier McKinney coming off his rookie contract in his mid-20s. They need safety help, and they feel his best foot falls in front of him. Josh Jacobs wasn't coming off his rookie deal, but again, he's mid-20s, and they're trying to get younger and better at that running back position. These two guys they just signed earlier this week, same thing. Coming off their rookie contract, they are young players, again, coming off their rookie contract, and Goody's hoping that their best football is ahead of them. Brian Gutekunst has done a solid job, a pretty good job in building a playoff contending football team year after year after year. The biggest problem I have with Goody as GM is I wish sometimes that Goody would go away from his norm and get somebody that doesn't typically fit his profile. It's like it's almost illegal to have somebody over 30 on your roster unless he's a kicker or you can only have one guy over 30 on your roster at a time. They did have two when they first signed McManus last year with Preston Smith and McManus. They ended up trading Preston Smith to Pittsburgh, and then it was just McManus. I wish Goody would take a chance. You have Trey Hendrickson, last year of his contract. Cincinnati's trying to unload. I understand the asking price is way too much right now, especially for what you're going to have to sign him to an extension. But the big problem with Hendrickson is he's 31. So he doesn't fit Goody's profile. He doesn't fit what Goody wants to do, which is stay young and get guys with their quote-unquote best football ahead of them. But Trey Hendrickson is a guy who's led the NFL in sacks the last 2 years. He had, 18 and a half sacks last year. You struggle to get to the quarterback. You said at your end of the season press conference, you said at the combine, you want to be able to get to the quarterback with 4 guys. Well, Trey Hendrickson is a guy that's going to help you get to the quarterback with 4 guys. Him, Rashawn Gary, Kiki Ngambare, those guys are going to put pressure on the quarterback and make the quarterback into mistakes. Like it's a no-brainer. Go get Trey Hendrickson. I don't want to give up a first-round pick for Hendrickson, but give up a second or a third or a couple seconds, a second this year or a fourth this year, plus a second or third next year, conditional third, to go bring a cat player of Trey Hendrickson's caliber to Green Bay. That's probably one of my biggest gripes with Goody, is he refuses to look outside his norm to try to improve the football team. It's okay to sign a guy who's 30. It's okay to sign a guy who's 31. The Packers are entering a Super Bowl window. They cannot be the youngest team in the NFL for a third year in a row and expect to compete for a championship. The other issue I have is, would Davante Adams have likely come back to Green Bay? Probably not. But the fact that you never even called him, the fact that you never even said, hey, Davante, it's Brian. How's it going? What can I do to get you to consider coming home? Davante was likely always going to go to the West Coast. That's what the speculation was, is what he wanted. But you could have just said, hey, Davante, what can I do to bring you home? Davante would have been a great asset to have in the wide receiver room that nobody took that next step last year, and to expect it, somebody to finally take that next step this year, to me, is not good roster building. Cooper Kupp's interesting to me. I'm not pounding the table saying they must go get Cooper Kupp, but I'm also not going to be upset if they sign Cooper Kupp. I'm really not. I think he would be a good asset to the locker room. He would be a good asset to the young wide receivers. And he could maybe be a good asset to a Dontavion Wicks, who I'm not ready to give up on yet. I think Dontavion Wicks is a great football player. Not a great football player. He's a great route runner who, if he can work on his hands a little bit, can become a great football player. That's what I meant to say. Great route runner, always seems to be open, but the only thing holding him back is inconsistent hands. And we all know a Packer receiver that struggled with inconsistent hands his first couple years in the league, and he was able to turn it around. Now I get that Davante's issues were different, but again, a very gifted route runner, always knew how to get open. That is what Dontavion Wicks is too. He's a gifted route runner who always seems to be open. He just needs to be more consistent with these. But that's my biggest gripe with Goody. It's the refusal to go outside your norm. We have the draft coming up in about a month. It's okay to trade draft picks for players to help your team. If you want to win a Super Bowl, you're going to have to go outside the norm every now and then. And Trey Hendrickson would be a perfect example of going outside that norm. So with that said, thank you so much for watching the show. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Listen to the podcast on Spotify. Listen to it on Apple. You can listen to every single episode of Talking Sports with Evan if you go to sportsthoughtsfromevan.substack.com. You'll find every episode that I've ever done and get see interviews from Gangrel, former WWE wrestler Gangrel, El Snow, Glacier. I got interviews with Drew McGorn, Kevin Holden, Andy Herman. I got Dusty Everly. I got a lot of great interviews that you can find anywhere you get your podcast for the show, too. You just got to have to look for them a little bit, but some great interviews. So thank you for watching. I'll be back with you next week, looking to finalize a potential guest for next week, and I'll let you know if I get that guest as soon as I get them. But with that said, hope you have a great rest of your night, have a great rest of your week, and great weekend, and I'll get back at you next week.